Hello, everyone. It's Charlton. Please subscribe to my channel and tap the notification bell. I'd appreciate it majorly. Okay, this is a great story over at CNN. All right, by Vicky Ward. I've seen her on CNN before. I think she might have wrote for the New Yorker too, and she has some kind of like British accent. Anyways, that doesn't matter. But this is a great story. It's about Parnas, and there's been a ton of reporting on him. And I haven't reported, made a video every single time his name's come up. But this one's definitely worth reviewing. And there's a ton in here. Okay. I'm not real sure why this is getting report on basically late on a Friday evening. Well, that's when it was updated. I don't know when it was originally purported, but. So it's about Parnas and Nunes, the ranking Republican on the Intelligence Committee, the dude who sat next to Schiff throughout much of the impeachment proceedings, even though it's not an actual official impeachment resolution or inquiry or whatever the hell it's actually called. And it seems as though a vote to that is coming. And whether or not, the total significance of that and whether or not, that's really going to actually lead to anything. Forget about whether or not the Senate's going to convict Trump. That's not what I'm suggesting. I'm saying whether or not it's going to be good for Trump or bad for Trump remains to be seen. But this is definitely, totally, shady as hell, man. And, I mean, things have gotten so crazy. That it's to the point where when something is super shady, it still just kind of just goes by the wayside. I mean, that's how bad things have gotten. Anyway, so there's many interesting things about this. And it's basically, through his attorney, whose name is Joseph Bondi, Lev Parnas' attorney. He's basically... his attorney is saying that he's willing to cooperate and speak with the Intelligence Committee and provide documents. Up to the point where he'll stop where he's going to incriminate himself. But the amount of details that he's revealing in here basically talks about two major things, which is Nunes taking a trip to Vienna, according to Parnas, and meeting with Viktor Shokin, or Shokin is his name. Who's the former prosecutor general in Ukraine, the one that, pretty much everybody's in agreement was majorly corrupt, irregardless, again, of what you think of Biden and Burisma and, and how shady that whole arrangement looked and his son being on the board and so forth. Everyone was in agreement that this dude was majorly corrupt, and that's why, Biden did call for his removal, but so did everybody else. He's nothing but trouble, this dude. And the fact that Giuliani or Nunes is now meeting with him, Nunes, that's how you pronounce that, is totally freaky, man. It's just weird. And so not only that, but and supposedly, it says here that Parnas learned that directly from Shokin himself. Shokin told him that, Nunes met with him in December 2018. And basically, according to Parnas' attorney, Nunes met with him at that particular moment, was basically right after the November midterm elections in 2018, when Republicans lost the majority in the House. And prior to that, Nunes was the chair of the Intelligence Committee, but he did it immediately following those elections, but before the new Congress came in session, so that two things. One, he wouldn't have to declare it, I think, because basically they're out of session, and, he took a trip with three other individuals. One of them's named in this article. I'll get to that in a second. But he didn't have to, declare it in some way. That's one. Two, he was still the chair of the Intelligence Committee. So, I mean, he timed it specifically in that way to sort of, conceal it to some extent. And also, that's right after the midterm elections. There was other reporting about Lev Parnas and all his activity, with Ron DeSantis in Florida in the days leading up to his election, which Ron DeSantis ultimately won, which shocked a lot of people because Ron DeSantis was way down in the polls. And I had something to say about that in the previous video, that I believe that resembled the 2016 election, that it looked like like the 2016 election, in my opinion, that it was fixed, that it looked like that thing was fixed, in a very similar fashion. But whatever, that's a side topic. So, but it says that Parnas claims that Nunes met with Shokin, which has not been previously reported. Add further. Parnas claims that Nunes met with Shokin, which has not been previously reported. Add further context to a Daily Beast report that Parnas helped arrange meetings and calls in Europe for Nunes last year, citing another Parnas lawyer, Ed McMahon. I think Bondi is based out of New York City. He's a criminal defense attorney as well as like a cannabis business attorney. Ed McMahon, I believe, does white-collar crime and I think is in Northern Virginia outside of Washington, D.C., something like that. So these revelations came to a head on Thursday when Democrat Rep. Eric Swalwell raised the Daily Beast story publicly during the impeachment proceeding. Parnas, who was indicted on federal campaign charges last month, worked with Shokin and Giuliani to push a pair of unfounded claims that Ukrainians interfered in the 2016 elections. Nunes had told Shokin of the urgent need to launch investigations into Burisma, Joe and Hunter Biden, and any purported Ukraine interference in 2016 election, Bondi told CNN. Bondi's the attorney for Lev Parnas. I don't know if this was known. I think this would have meant that Nunes would have had to recuse himself from his ranking, being the ranking member on the Intelligence Committee, and possibly will have to, recuse himself going forward if it actually proceeds to an actual, impeachment, an actual inquiry, or an actual resolution, whatever the hell the official impeachment thing, because that's what's happened so far. Isn't it's just sort of like a preliminary thing. So, there's so much to this article, and I don't want to read the entire thing, so I just don't want to waste your time. But there's a lot to it that I don't want to skip over, too. So it says, a trip to Europe in the BLT, Nunes meeting with Parnas and the BLT team, which is apparently there's a BLT restaurant on the second floor of Trump International Hotel in Washington where this team of several people would meet a couple times a week to basically strategize on this particular topic, on finding dirt on the Bidens in Ukraine and other things, namely that, though. And so, but if I could quickly go through the most important aspects of these sections. A trip to Europe. Congressional travel records show that Nunes and 3 aides traveled to Europe from November 30th to December 3rd, 2018. The records do not specify that Nunes and his staff went to Vienna or Austria, and Nunes was not required to disclose the exact details of the trip. Nunes's entourage included retired Colonel Derek Harvey, who had previously worked for Trump on the National Security Council. I'm not familiar with that dude. And now works for Nunes on the House Intelligence Committee. Harvey declined to comment. Bondi told CNN that Nunes planned the trip to Vienna. Vienna is key, okay? Vienna is definitely key, and I'll tell you in a second. To Vienna after Republicans lost control of the House in the midterm elections on November 6, 2018. Mr. Parnas learned through Nunes' investigator, Derek Harvey, that the congressman had sequenced this trip to occur after the midterm elections, yet before Congress returns to session, so that Nunes would not have to disclose the trip details to his Democrat colleagues in Congress, said Bondi. At the time of the trip, Nunes was the chair of the Intelligence Committee. In January, Democrat Rep. Adam Schiff took over as chairman of the powerful committee, which is now conducting the impeachment inquiry. Nunes' meetings with Parnas, Bondi says that according to his client, following a brief in-person meeting in late 2018, Parnas and Nunes had at least 2 more phone conversations, and that Nunes instructed Parnas to work with Harvey on the Ukraine matters. Parnas says that shortly after the Vienna trip, he and Harvey met at Trump International Hotel in Washington, where they discussed claims about the Bidens, as well as allegations of Ukrainian election interference, according to Bondi. Following this, Bondi says that in a phone conversation, Nunes told Parnas that he was conducting his own investigation into the Bidens and asked Parnas to help validating information he gathered from conversations with various current and former Ukrainian officials, including Shokin. Parnas says that Nunes told him he'd been partly working off of information from journalist John Solomon, who had written a number of articles on the Biden conspiracy theory for The Hill. CNN reached out to Harvey on multiple occasions for comment, reached by phone. On Friday morning, Harvey refused to comment and directed CNN to contact the communications director for Nunes. The BLT team. Bondi tells CNN that Parnas is willing to tell Congress about a series of regular meetings he says he took part in at Trump International Hotel in Washington that concerned Ukraine. According to Bondi, Parnas became part of what he described as a team that met several times a week in a private room at the BLT restaurant on the second floor of the Trump Hotel. In addition to giving the group access to key people in Ukraine who could help their cause, Parnas translated their conversations, Bondi said. The group, according to Bondi, included Giuliani, Parnas, the journalist Solomon, and the married attorneys Joe DeJovana and Victor Tunsing. Those 2 attorneys, they represent Solomon, but they also represent an oligarch, a Russian oligarch who's got ties to the Russian mob and who's facing, extradition to the United States for bribery charges, stemming out of the, from the U.S. attorney in Chicago, Dmitry Firtash, so those attorneys represent that dude in Vienna, okay, and that's where Nunes is traveling to meet with Shokin. Dude. So, again, the group, according to Bondi, included Giuliani, Parnas, the journalist Solomon, and the married attorneys DeJovana and Joe DeJovana and Victoria Tunsing. Parnas said that Harvey would occasionally be present as well, and that it was Parnas' understanding that Harvey was Nunes' proxy, Bondi said. Solomon, basically John Solomon confirmed that he was been there, but he's not part of this team as it's described here, and he was there just doing reporting. I'm paraphrasing, but let me just read to be specific. Solomon confirmed the meetings to CNN, but said that calling the group a team was a bit of a mischaracterization. Solomon said that connectivity happened more organically, and that his role was only as a journalist reporting a story. Solomon also said that DeJovana and Tunsing, his lawyers, introducing him to Parnas as a facilitator and interpreter in early March. Parnas was very helpful to me in getting Ukraine officials on the record, Solomon told CNN. I only gradually realized Lev was working for other people, including Rudy Giuliani. Solomon insists he was only reporting on a story as it unfolded, any suggestion that I was involved in any campaign to pressure Ukraine or the United States government to take any actions is categorically false, Solomon said. Giuliani did not respond. How many times did they meet, or how often did they meet? It says, Bondi tells CNN that Parnas is willing to tell Congress about a series of regular meetings he says he took part in at Trump International Hotel in Washington that concerned Ukraine. According to Bondi, Parnas became part of what he described as a team that met several times a week in a private room at the BLT restaurant on the second floor of Trump Hotel. I don't know, several times a week. For how many weeks, it doesn't say. And then it goes on to describe how Parnas basically was, feels that he's been left, hung out to dry, and with Trump saying he doesn't know him and doesn't know anything about him, and that he's just kind of just been left holding the bag. Kind of, I'm paraphrasing, but I've read enough, and that's pretty much the whole story there. And we definitely haven't heard the last of this. I will say that I'm sure the Intelligence Committee is not thrilled about having this dude testify publicly. I can say that for a fact, because of various stories various reports you read about him in his past, no doubt about it. So, but you haven't heard the last of this, and it's pretty crazy. But the fact that this kind of hooks up in Vienna, where this other Russian oligarch is, Dmitry Firtash, who's probably worth, I don't even know, $20-30 billion or something like that. Nobody knows, dude. And by basically being an intermediary between one of the major gas companies in Ukraine and in Russia. That's where he made his major fortune. Then he was lent, something like given like a $12 or $11 billion line of credit from Russian banks that allowed him to basically buy up other major industries, primarily the fertilizer industry. I think he's a huge in the fertilizer industry in Ukraine, and he just owns so much, and that just brings so much power that he employs so many people, brings so much political influence, just like anywhere. But it's all stemming from basically from Russia, And that's the story there, dude. That's the story there. Thanks for watching my videos. Please subscribe to my channel. Give me a like down below. I'll see you in the next video. Later, man.